Good day, Sir June Lester Cervantes. My name is Sandy C. Andales from DSIT3F. So today I am going to explain my answers from assessment 1 to 4. So number 1, what is Eloquent ORM in Laravel and how does it simplify database interactions? Eloquent ORM is Laravel's implementation of an object relational mapper. It's a powerful tool that bridges the gap between your PHP code and your database. Instead of writing raw SQL queries, Eloquence lets you interact with your database using PHP objects. So in PHP, we work with objects that represents real-world entities like users, products, or orders. Databases stores data in tables with columns and rows. With Eloquent ORM, it helps us bridge the gap between those two and allows us to interact with our database using PHP objects, making our code more readable, maintainable, and less prone to errors. So here is an example. This example shows how Eloquent simplifies database interactions by allowing you to work with tasks as objects, making your code more expressive and readable. Number 2. How does Laravel handle HTTP requests and define routes? Laravel's routing system handles HTTP requests and routes them to the appropriate controllers. So, when a user visits a web page, their browser sends an HTTP request to the server. Laravel's routing system handles these requests and directs them to the appropriate controller. So here's an example. Imagine you are building a blog with Laravel. You want to have pages for individual blog posts, a page for all posts, and a contact page. So this route get post controller at index displays all posts. Then this route get post ID post controller at show displays a specific post. Then the route get contact controller at show displays the contact page. So number 3, explain the role of Blade templating engine in Laravel. Blade is a Laravel's templating engine and it allows you to create dynamic web pages by embedding PHP code within HTML templates. So with Blade's templating engine, it makes our code more organized and easier to maintain. Example, imagine yourself building a website with a blog section. Then you want to display a list of blog posts on the homepage and have a separate page for each post. So, the homepage, you might use a Blade template to loop through all posts and display their titles, excerpts. And then sa post page, you might use another Blade template to display the full content of a single post. So number 4, what are the security features provided by Laravel? Laravel provides a range of security features to protect your application from common vulnerabilities like authentication, authorization, CSRF protection, and SQL injection protection. So authentication, Laravel has built-in authentication features to secure our application and protect our sensitive data. While in authorization, you can use Laravel's authorization system to control who can access different parts of your application. And then the CSRF protection, Laravel protects against cross-site request forgery attacks, which can be used to manipulate users into performing actions they didn't intend to. Then the SQL injection protection, is Laravel's database layer helps prevent SQL injection attacks, which can be used to compromise your database. So, for example, imagine you are building a web application where users need to log in to access their accounts. So, Laravel's authentication system will ensure that only authorized users can access their accounts. While you can use Laravel's authorization system to restrict access to certain features based on their roles or permissions. And Laravel will protect your application from CSRF attacks, preventing malicious users from manipulating users' actions. So number 5, how does Laravel support task scheduling? Laravel's task scheduler allows you to automate tasks that need to be run at specific time or intervals, and it uses cron jobs to schedule these attacks. These tasks. So, um, Laravel's task scheduler allows us to automate tasks that need to be run at specific times or intervals. So, when we say cron jobs, Laravel uses cron jobs to schedule tasks, and cron jobs are background processes that run automatically at specified times. So, for example, imagine you are building a website with a newsletter feature. You want to send out a newsletter to your subscribers every week. Um, With this, you can use Laravel's Task Scheduler to create a cron job that runs every week out newsletters and sends out newsletter to all subscribers. So that's assessment 1. So let us now proceed to assessment 2. So how can you define a simple route in Laravel, and what would be a real-life example? In Laravel, you can create a route using the route colon get method. This method tells the website what to do when someone visits a specific URL. So, think of a route like a map for your website. It tells the website where to send users based on the URL they type in their browser. The route colon get method is used for URLs that are accessed using the get method, which is the most common way to request information from a website. So for example, imagine you have a website that sells shoes. You could create a route that shows all the shoes when someone visits the shoe page. So here is an example. Route route get URI shoes, and this code fetches and displays the list of shoes. Then return view, assuming that we have a shoes view file. So this code tells Laravel that when someone visits the shoes URL, this URL, run the code inside this function and display the shoes view. So number 2, how do name routes work in Laravel, and how might you use them in a real-world application? Name routes are like giving a nickname to a specific page on your website. So this makes it easier to refer to that page in your code. So instead of using the full URL, which is the shoes, um, every time you want to link to the shoe page, you can give it a nickname like this shoes page. This makes your code cleaner and easier to read. For example, you could give the page the nickname shoes page. Then if you want to link to the shoe page from another part of your website, you can use the nickname instead of typing out the full URL. So here is an example. So this code defines the name root. So um, this code fetch and display the list of shoes. That one. So let's proceed to number 3. What is the purpose of root groups in Laravel and how might they be used? So root groups are like folders for your website's routes. They help you organize your routes and make your code easier to read, and you might use this to create a route group for all the pages related to shoes, and this way all the shoe related routes are grouped together, making it easier to find and manage them. So imagine you have a lot of routes on your website. It can be hard to keep track of them all. So root groups help you group related routes together, making your code more organized and easier to manage. So in this example, here, this code is to display the main shoe page. Then this code is to display the men's shoes. And this code display the women's shoes. So this code creates a root group for all the shoe related pages, making it clear which routes belongs to the shoe category. So next one is, how does middleware work in Laravel? Can you provide a practical example? So, middleware is like a security guard for your website. It checks if someone is allowed to access a specific page. So, for example, you could use a middleware to make sure only logged in users can access the shoe page. If someone tries to visit the shoe page without logging in, the middleware will redirect them to the login page. So, middleware acts as a filter between the user's request and your application's code. It can perform various checks such as authentication, making sure the user is logged in, and authorization, making sure the user has the right permissions or even logging request. So in this example, this define the middleware, and this code fetches and display the list of shoes. So in um, this code tells Laravel that before anyone can access the shoes page, they must be authenticated. So if they are not authenticated, redirect them to the login page. So number 5, how can you handle form submissions and CSRF protection in Laravel? Laravel makes it easy to handle forms and protect your website from security threats. Imagine you have a form on your website where people can sign up for an account. Laravel will handle the form submission and make sure the data is saved correctly. It will also protect your website from people trying to submit fake information. Laravel provides built-in features for handling form submissions and protecting against cross-site request forgery, or CSRF attacks. So CSRF attacks happen when a malicious user tries to trick a logged in user into submitting a request to your website without their knowledge. So here is the example. So the 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 at CSRF directive is automatically generates a CSRF token and it includes it in the form. So Laravel will then verify this token when the form is submitted, preventing malicious requests. So that would be all for assessment 2. So let us now proceed to assessment number 3. So what is template inheritance in Blade and how can it be used in a real-world application? So think of it like making a copy of a document. Blade's template inheritance lets you create a basic and then make copies of it, adding your own unique content to each copy. So, imagine you have a website with a header, a footer, and a navigation that are the same on every page. You can create a base template for this, and then for each page, you can create child templates that use the base template but add their own unique content. So, base template this is like your original document with the basic structure. While child templates, these are the copies you make where you add specific content to each one. So, for example, imagine you have a website with a header, footer, and navigation that are the same on every page. You can create a base template for these and then for each page like home, about, or contact. You can create child templates that use the base template but add their own unique content. So number 2. How can blade sections and yields be utilized to manage content in different views? So blades at section and at yield are like placeholders in your templates. They let you define specific areas where you can insert different content for each page. So the at section tells the blade where to put the content for a specific section, while the yield tells blade to insert the content from the section into the base template. So, for example, there is a website you could have a section you could have a at section for the main content area of each page. The base template would have a at yield for that section. So when you create a home page, you can put the home content in the at section and it will appear in the main content area of the website. So number 3, how do blade control structures make your code more readable compared to raw PHP? So blades control structures are like shortcuts for common tasks in your templates, making your code easier to read and understand. So instead of using raw PHP to display a list of products, you can use blades at for each loop, which is simpler and easier to read. So these are special commands like at if, at else, at for, etc. that make it easy to do things like show or hide content based on conditions or loop through lists of data. So in raw PHP, you can use raw PHP code in Blade, but it can make your templates look messy and harder to understand. what is the purpose of this syntax in Blade and why is it important for security? So this syntax is in Blade is like a special way to display information in your templates. It's important for security because it automatically protects your website from hackers. For example, if you have a variable $ name containing a user's name, you can use um, these two curly braces, the $ name, then the closing curly braces to display it in your website. Blade will make sure that the name is displayed safely even if it contains special characters. So, Blade automatically makes sure that any potential dangerous HTML code is handled safely, preventing hackers from injecting bad code into your website. So, number 5. How can Blade's components and slots be used to create reusable UI elements? Blade components are like pre-made building blocks for your website. You can create them once and then use them over and over again on different pages. Slots let you customize the content inside these building blocks. So, components, these are like mini templates for things like buttons, menus, or cards. While slots, these are like placeholders inside components where you can put your own content. So, that is all for assessment number 3. So, let us now proceed in the assessment number 4. How do you configure database connections in Laravel? And why might you need this in a real-world application? You can configure multiple database connections in Laravel by defining them in the database.php configuration file. This allows you to connect to different databases such as a primary database for your main application data and the separate database for logging or analytics. For example, think of an e-commerce website. Then the main database stores user accounts, orders, and products. You could have a separate database for storing website usage data or analytics. So the database.php, this file tells Laravel how to connect to your databases. You can add different connections for different purposes. So why do we have a multiple databases? Imagine having a website with a lot of data. You might want to keep user information separate from product information or store logs in a different database. So, how can Laravel's query builder be used to efficiently retrieve data from the database, and what is a real-world example of this? So, um, Laravel's query builder is like a handy tool for getting information from your database. Uh, it makes writing database query easier and more readable. For example, you want to find all products that cost less than 100 peso. The query builder lets you do this with a few lines of code instead of writing a long SQL query. So, the query builder lets you write queries in a way that um, that's easy to understand, like saying select these columns and where this condition is true. Instead of writing complex SQL code, you can use the query builder to do something with simpler commands. So number 3, how do you define and use eloquent models in Laravel? And what is a practical use case for this? Eloquent models are like special objects that represent your database tables, making it easier to work with your data. For example, you could create an eloquent model for your products table. This model lets you easily add, update, or delete products without writing complex SQL code. So instead of writing SQL code, you can use eloquent models and interact with your database using simple methods like find, create, update, and delete. So eloquent models also help you define how different tables are connected, like how a user might have multiple orders. So number 4, what are migrations in Laravel and how are they to manage database schema changes? Um, Migrations are like a history of changes you can make to your database. They help you keep track of everything and easily undo changes if needed. Imagine you add a new column to your products table. The migration will record this change and you can use it to undo and change later if needed. So migrations keep a record of every change you make to your database so you can see what's been done and easily go back to previous versions. So each migration has two parts, one for making the change and one for undoing it. So lastly but not least, how do you create and use seeders in Laravel to populate your database with initial data? Seeders are like special scripts that add initial data to your database, like creating some sample users or products. You can create a seeder to add some sample products to your database when you first set up when you first set up your website. This gives you some data to work with while you are developing. So, seeders have a special method called run that contains the code for adding data to your database. Seeders are usually run when you set up a new development environment or when you need to reset your database. So that is all for my assessment 1 to 4, and thank you.